Oskar Dirlewanger. Oskar Dirlewanger is often described as the most depraved of all Nazi officers. And that's saying something. Before the war, he was already a convicted child molester, which should have ended any career. Instead, the chaos of the Nazi rise to power gave him opportunity. He formed what became known as the Dirlewanger Brigade, a unit composed of criminals, including murderers, poachers, and rapists. What set his brigade apart was not just their brutality, but their complete lack of military discipline. They burned entire villages to the ground, massacred civilians, and carried out mass rapes in occupied Poland and Belarus. During the Warsaw Uprising in 1944, Dirlewanger's men killed an estimated 30,000 to 40,000 civilians in the Wola massacre alone, one of the single bloodiest events of the war. Even other SS officers considered him monstrous. Heinrich Himmler reportedly described Dirlewanger as a man who should not be allowed near decent people, yet continued to employ him because of his effectiveness in suppressing resistance. After the war, Dirlewanger was captured and beaten to death while in French custody. For many, his violent end felt like the only fitting conclusion. Irma Grese. Irma Grese, nicknamed the Hyena of Auschwitz, became one of the most infamous female guards in the Nazi system. She joined the SS as a teenager, driven by ambition and loyalty to the regime. By the time she was 19, she was already working at Auschwitz and later Bergen-Belsen, where her sadism made her notorious. Prisoners testified that she carried a whip and used it liberally. She unleashed dogs on inmates for her own amusement, and was known to beat women so severely that many died from their injuries. Survivors recalled her chilling presence during selections for the gas chambers, where she mocked and taunted women before sending them to their deaths. At the Bergen-Belsen trials, witnesses described her cruelty in such detail that even hardened British prosecutors were shocked. Despite her youth, she was only 22, she was found guilty of war crimes and sentenced to death. In December 1945, Irma Grese was hanged. Her case remains one of the starkest examples of how ordinary individuals could embrace extraordinary cruelty under the Nazi system. Klaus Barbie. Klaus Barbie, the butcher of Lyon, was one of the most feared Gestapo officers in occupied France. As head of the Gestapo in Lyon, he earned his nickname through systematic torture of captured resistance fighters. Survivors described beatings, electrocution, and waterboarding, techniques designed to break both body and spirit. One of his most infamous crimes was the deportation of 44 Jewish children from the village of Iziu in 1944. They were taken to Auschwitz, where every one of them was murdered. Barbie's ruthlessness left deep scars on the French resistance and Jewish communities. After the war, instead of being immediately tried, Barbie was recruited by American intelligence during the Cold War. They saw him as useful against Soviet influence. With their help, he escaped to South America, living under the name Klaus Altmann in Bolivia. For decades, he built a new life, even advising military dictatorships. Only in the 1980s was he extradited to France, where he was tried for crimes against humanity. His trial became a national reckoning in France, and he was sentenced to life imprisonment, where he died in 1991. Josef Mengele. Josef Mengele, the Angel of Death, remains one of the most infamous names of the Holocaust. At Auschwitz, he oversaw selections on the arrival platform. With a flick of his hand, he decided who would be put to work and who would be sent directly to the gas chambers. But what made Mengele infamous were his experiments. He focused especially on twins, hoping to unlock secrets of genetics that could increase the Aryan birth rate. He injected children with diseases, performed brutal surgeries without anesthesia, and experimented with chemicals in their eyes to attempt to change their color. Survivors recalled that he would sometimes bring sweets to children before subjecting them to horrific procedures, a disturbing reminder of how cruelty could masquerade as kindness. After the war, Mengele fled using rat lines that smuggled Nazis out of Europe. He lived for decades under false identities in Argentina, Paraguay, and Brazil. Survivors and Nazi hunters tracked him, but he always stayed one step ahead. He drowned while swimming in Brazil in 1979, living free until his natural death. For many, His escape from justice was one of history's greatest failures. Christian Wirth. Christian Wirth was a key figure in designing the Nazi killing machine. Before the Holocaust, he directed part of the T4 euthanasia program, which murdered the disabled and mentally ill. Wirth helped set up gas chambers disguised as showers, first used in Germany itself. When the Nazis launched Operation Reinhard, the extermination of Polish Jews, Wirth was brought in for his expertise. He oversaw the construction and operation of camps like Belzec, Sobibor, and Treblinka. Survivors and even SS men described him as terrifyingly brutal. He personally beat prisoners to death and carried out executions when guards hesitated. Wirth's focus was efficiency. He streamlined mass killing methods, making the extermination camps into death factories. His nickname among fellow Nazis was Christian the Terrible. In 1944, Yugoslav partisans ambushed and killed him. His role in shaping the machinery of genocide makes him one of the most significant and gruesome architects of Nazi mass murder. Kurt Franz. Kurt Franz, the last commandant of Treblinka, was known for his deceptive appearance. By all accounts, he seemed mild-mannered, even friendly on the surface. But behind that facade was sadism. Franz trained dogs to attack prisoners, sometimes commanding them to tear people apart in front of others as a show of power. He personally executed inmates, often without warning, just to instill terror. His victims recalled that he was unpredictable, calm one moment, murderous the next. Treblinka itself was the site of nearly 900,000 murders in just over a year. Franz photographed life at the camp, creating an album that still survives. The chilling images show him smiling with comrades while genocide unfolded around them. After the war, Franz was tried in West Germany in the 1960s and sentenced to life imprisonment. He spent decades behind bars, unlike many who escaped justice. His life sentence reflected the central role he played in one of the Holocaust's deadliest camps. Rudolf Höss. Rudolf Höss was the commandant of Auschwitz, the deadliest camp of all. Under his leadership, Auschwitz became a killing center where over 1 million people perished. What set Höss apart was his bureaucratic, detached efficiency. He did not revel in cruelty the way others did, but instead treated mass murder as an administrative challenge to be solved. He oversaw the expansion of gas chambers and crematoria to handle industrial-scale killing. He worked with chemical suppliers to secure Zyklon B, the cyanide pesticide repurposed for extermination. His memoirs, written while awaiting trial, revealed chillingly calm descriptions of these processes, as if he were managing a factory, not a death camp. Captured in 1946, Höss testified at the Nuremberg trials, providing key evidence about the Holocaust's scale. He was extradited to Poland, tried, and sentenced to death. In 1947, he was hanged on the grounds of Auschwitz itself, a symbolic moment where justice returned to the scene of his crimes. Amon Goeth. Amon Goeth, remembered from Schindler's List, was commandant of the Plazow labor camp in Poland. He quickly became notorious for his random, sadistic violence. Prisoners described how he would stand on his villa balcony with a rifle, shooting inmates at random. He seemed to kill not for discipline, but for sport. Goeth also oversaw the liquidation of ghettos in Krakow and Tarnów, where thousands of Jews were deported to Auschwitz. Survivors remembered his cruelty vividly. He beat prisoners to death with his bare hands, unleashed dogs on them, and executed people on a whim. His brutality was so extreme that even the SS began investigating him for corruption and theft from Jewish property. He was arrested in 1944, but the collapse of the Third Reich meant his trial never took place. Instead, he was captured by US forces, extradited to Poland, and tried for war crimes. Witnesses gave harrowing testimony about his sadism. In 1946, he was executed by hanging. His legacy remains as one of the most feared and sadistic figures of the Nazi regime.